Why is it that people with Asperger syndrome, people with autism, tend to give in to love bombing? Now, love bombing, what is that? Well, you probably already understand that love bombing is when somebody else injects themselves into your life, and they do that to convince you that they're a good guy, that they're somebody that you can trust, so that they can take advantage of you. Now, we know dangerous religious cults do this often. They will love bomb people, make them feel like they are belonging to this group of people because, well, why? That's the question. Why is it that we give in to that kind of love bombing? It may not be a religious cult at all or any kind of cult. It could be, and typically is, just an individual who wants to take advantage of us. And it seems like Aspies are a little bit more vulnerable. We're a little bit more gullible. We're a little bit more welcoming and allowing of that type of behavior because, well, we just don't recognize it. So we have these people who come into our lives as Aspies and they take advantage of us. We need to understand why that's happening so we can put a stop to it or at least try to reduce people from hurting us. Here are 5 things. Number 1, because we are looking for love and acceptance. That makes us very easy to manipulate. Now you stop and think about it. If you have Asperger syndrome, if you are autistic growing up in your life, you probably found it very difficult to make friends because people tend to reject us because there's something a little bit odd about us, something a little bit off, something a little bit different. Now, some people with Asperger syndrome, that gets really severe. I mean, they are bullied, they are rejected. They find themselves on the outs socially, and what's more, they have mind blindness that we talk about a lot. They don't know how to assimilate, how to be a part of a group. And so they spend much of their lives feeling very lonely, very alone. They just have some serious difficulties with socializing in general. And so they have this craving that has never been met. They grow up into adults and they're still having these childhood desires, which are perfectly natural and good, to be accepted, to be a part of the group. So here comes this guy, this woman, whoever, and he starts to love bomb you, takes interest in you, and pretends to really care about you, maybe to be your buddy, maybe to be your love interest, whatever. The end objective from the love bomber's perspective, typically these people are narcissists, but not always, is they just want to scam you. They want to take advantage of you. They're there for one reason only, and that is to embellish themselves, to feed their own ego, sometimes to take take advantage of you financially. Even if you don't have anything, if you're dead broke, they will try to get something out of you physically, if they possibly can. So what we have to do is we have to understand that the fact that we have been deprived of love and acceptance makes us particularly vulnerable to these insidious people. Number 2 is love bombers are very convincing, persuasive individuals. People who do this tend to be charismatic. Maybe naturally, typically naturally, they learned early that because people like them, they can use that charisma to, to manipulate people. And so they do. And not only so, but they look for those who are the easiest to manipulate. Hate to talk about Ted Bundy, remember the serial killer, but that was his ploy. He was a very likable. They say he was attractive. I never thought the guy was that good looking, but apparently he was, because everyone says he was, and you got to go along with the crowd, right? But he had that personality that people just trusted. They just liked him. And as a result of that, he took the lives of I don't know how many dozens of young women. Now, I'm not sure you're going to have a person that severe come into your life, but still there are people who will assassinate your character. They will try to kill off your reputation if you let them into your lives. And the way that he would do that, this is kind of extreme, but the way he would convince people, usually young college-age women, is he would get a fake cast and put it on his arm or maybe on his leg and pretend to have this handicap. And he would ask them to help him do something like put something in his vehicle. And so they would help him, and he would get them in his vehicle, and they couldn't get out. There's no handle on the door, and he would abuse them. I mean, to the extreme. Most of them, many of them he actually killed. So again, the person in your life who's taking advantage of you may not actually kill you, but they can make your life very, very miserable. But the point is, they're very convincing. They're very charismatic. So that doesn't mean that every person who is charismatic or friendly or likable, affable, all those people are not necessarily bad people. But we tend to be too welcoming of those kinds of people. Again, as we said at number one, is because we're looking for love. We are starving for acceptance. And along comes this person. Now, if this is truly a good person, cool, you got a friend. Now, you got to keep in mind, and I do this when somebody is particularly nice to me, I wonder why is it throughout all my life, all these people have rejected me because of my autism, but this person is particularly nice. That to me is a red flag. And sometimes I find that these really nice people are just nice people. And so you develop a friendship, but still you got to have that alarm set in your mind that you got to watch out because this is not normal. Number three is because we have what I call one-way boundaries. Now, some people with Asperger syndrome have no boundaries whatsoever, or their boundaries are ill-defined, so that everybody has access to you, just about any time, and they take advantage of it. But if you put up boundaries, look, you can't get close to me unless you meet certain criteria. We need to do a video on that alone. But we have these one-way boundaries typically if we've matured and we've developed boundaries. And by one way, I mean we let people, or we don't let everybody in, but we let ourselves out. We go outside our boundaries to where they are. It's kind of like building a fence to keep the wolf out, and then you go outside to where the wolf is, which I guess is okay because you can't stay in your boundaries forever, right? But we need to understand that if we're going to live outside our boundaries, then the boundaries are there for no apparent reason. So the point is we need to put up boundaries that make us aware, make others aware that they can't have access to us to take advantage of us, but we also need to convince ourselves that we need to stay within certain boundaries so that they can't have access to us outside those boundaries. For example, if you're on the internet, there are people who will contact you and you will say, people who are, what do they call it, catfishing. And we go outside our boundaries and I don't, but there's some people that I know do. And they think, we got a friend. And next thing you know, they're sending their friend money. That's because they had boundaries I'm not going to be taken advantage of. But they go outside the boundary, and they meet the very same people, and the same thing happens. So one-way boundaries is one of the reasons we're taken advantage of. The other reason is because, we just don't love ourselves. We talked about this in other videos, but let me ask you this. What is positive about you? Do you remember we did a whole video on this? Take out a piece of paper, pencil, or maybe on your computer and type out everything about you that is positive. That's hard to do for some people with Asperger syndrome. Now, this is between you and you, nobody else. Once you make your list, tear it up, throw it away, whatever. If you make your list on your computer, just delete it when you're done. But what is it about you that is positive? Well, you could probably think of 1,000 things, but you don't think of those things because your mind is so preoccupied with the negatives in your life. So what is positive about you? Well, number one, you're probably not dying of some contagious disease or whatever. That's a positive thing. If you feel good, that's a positive thing. If you enjoy the sunshine, that's a positive thing. If you like fried chicken, that's a positive thing. Make a list of all the things you could possibly think of about you that is positive. If you're an honest person, put down, I'm an honest person. So if you stop and think about all the positives in your life, the things that are right about you, You got to have a massive list. But those things, again, never come to our minds because we are so preoccupied with allowing other people to define who we are. Other people define us as losers. You know, hey, you got Asperger syndrome. They may not put it in those terms, but they'll call us space aliens or whatever. You're just a little bit weird, you know. And sometimes they don't say anything. They just ignore us and send us a message subtly, and we still pick up the message. So we're having all this negative influence, negative signals coming in, sometimes directly, sometimes implied. And so that becomes our self-perception. It's very unbalanced. So to balance that perception, we need to love ourselves by just being honest. And okay, yeah, we actually do have some negatives, but we don't have to make a list of that because, well, people do it for us. But what we do need to do is have a conscious effort to articulate the positive things about us, because if we don't, that is going to make us vulnerable to people who want to love bomb us, because we're going to try to get that love outside the boundaries, right? We're going to open our boundaries and let somebody breach the gate, so to speak, come inside because, well, we're starving for love, and here is the person who is going to give us that love. Actually, they're not, because they just want to take advantage of us. But if we love ourselves, and not in a narcissistic sense, but just in a balanced, centered, just being honest with our positive sense, that makes us less vulnerable to these people who want to love bomb us so they can take advantage of us. And the illustration I use frequently, if you want to understand love bombing better, just think of a used car salesman. Walk on a used car lot, doesn't matter what you look like, what you sound like, what you talk like. Chances are there's going to be some guy in a little building on the used car lot who's got nothing better to do than come out and be nice to you. Because what's he or she got to lose, you know? There's nobody else on the car lot anyhow, and you may be a sale. So they come out and they're just so friendly. If you are lonely and down and out and you just need somebody nice to talk to, go to used car lot. You know, the nicest guy in the world is at the used car lot. Number 5 is this. We need to address childhood issues. And probably a more accurate way to say that is childhood abuses. That admit the fact, and I think most of us already do, admit the fact that at the very best, we were ignored as children. And that impacted our self-perception, the way that we think about ourselves. We need to address those things. We need to stop, I think, and this is what I do, and think about specific moments in my life when I was either verbally abused or, typically for me, I wasn't bullied that much, but I just kind of ignored. You know, I was just somebody who wandered around on my own. Not that I wandered, but you get the idea. And so I grew up as an adult with that identity. And as an adult, you know, I'm pushing 70 years old, so I've learned a thing or two over the decades, sharing with you some of those things, so hopefully I can help you along your way. So we internalize those negatives. And that goes back to number 4, is we have to balance those by making that list, not a mental list. I mean, you can do it mentally if you want to. But I think it helps to write it down so your eyes will connect with what you wrote on that piece of paper, or type it on your computer so you can easily delete it when you're done. But you connect with that. But we've got to address, I think, those childhood issues. And again, I think many people with Asperger syndrome have done that. But we need to get serious about it so we can resolve those issues. And if we don't, we're making ourselves vulnerable to love bombers, because we will use them to resolve those issues for us. Do you see those 2 rectangles on the screen? If you want our conversation to continue, just click one of those 2 rectangles, and you and I keep hanging out for a while. If not, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see y'all next time.